From Richard Dreyfuss forgetting his own iconic Jaws line to real prison inmates getting Wendy's meals during filming, Stakeout hides some of the most bizarre behind-the-scenes stories of the 1980s. This buddy cop comedy topped the box office for 5 straight weeks, sparked 2 Indian remakes, and featured a psychiatric hospital that became Hollywood's go-to haunted location. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about. Stakeout. Fact 1. Dreyfuss forgot his own Jaws line. During a break in filming Stakeout, the cast and crew decided to pass the time with an impromptu movie trivia game on set. Emilio Estevez, who was working alongside Richard Dreyfuss for the first time, threw out what he thought would be an easy question for his co-star. He asked Dreyfuss to identify which movie featured the memorable line, "This is no boating accident." The quote came from Jaws, the 1975 blockbuster that had made Dreyfuss a household name and earned him an Academy Award nomination. But in an embarrassing twist, Dreyfuss completely blanked on his own iconic line from one of the biggest films of his career. He had no idea what movie Estevez was talking about, much to the amusement of everyone watching. The crew found this moment so hilarious and endearing that they decided it was too good not to use. They worked the entire awkward exchange into the actual script of Stakeout, recreating the trivia game scene almost exactly as it had happened in real life. In the film, Estevez's character Chris Lecce asks Dreyfuss's character Bill Reimers the same trivia question, and Reimers fails to recognize the Jaws quote, just like Dreyfuss had done on set. The scene became one of many examples of the genuine chemistry and playful dynamic between the 2 leads, much of which was inspired by their off-screen interactions. This self-deprecating moment showcased Dreyfuss's willingness to laugh at himself and added an unexpected layer of authenticity to the buddy cop comedy, proving that sometimes the best movie moments come from real-life bloopers and forgotten memories. Fact 2. Real inmates got Wendy's meals. When the production team arrived at Ocala Prison in Burnaby, British Columbia, to film several key scenes for Stakeout, they faced an unusual challenge. The prison was still operational and housed real inmates who would be living just yards away from the film crew during the shoot. The production needed to ensure that the noise from filming, the bright lights, and the general disruption wouldn't cause problems with the actual prisoners. Someone came up with a creative solution that turned into one of the stranger behind-the-scenes stories from the entire production. The film company made a deal to provide Wendy's meals to all of the real inmates at Ocala in exchange for their cooperation and patience during the noisy filming process. The prisoners were apparently delighted with this arrangement, getting fast food instead of standard prison meals, while Hollywood set up shop in their facility. But the story gets even more bizarre. According to crew members who were present during the shoot, some of the inmates developed a sense of humor about the whole situation. They jokingly approached the production team and offered to stage an actual prison riot if the filmmakers wanted more authentic and dramatic footage for their movie. The prisoners were kidding, of course, but the offer showed just how surreal the entire filming experience had become. The production politely declined the generous offer and stuck to their scripted scenes. But the bizarre interaction became a legendary story that cast and crew members shared for years afterward. Fact 3. Madeleine Stowe's breakthrough was almost someone else's. Madeleine Stowe landed the female lead role of Maria Maguire in Stakeout, playing the woman who becomes the object of surveillance and eventual romance for Richard Dreyfuss's character. The role represented a major career breakthrough for Stowe, who had spent years working primarily in television before getting this chance to shine in a major Hollywood production. However, not everyone was convinced she was the right choice for the part. Roger Ebert, the famous film critic, published a review suggesting that actress Maria Conchita Alonso would have been a better and funnier choice for the role. In his critique, Ebert specifically noted Alonso's irrepressible good humor and comedic timing, qualities he felt would have elevated the romantic storyline and played better against Dreyfuss's natural comic energy. Despite this professional criticism from one of the most influential movie reviewers in America, Stowe's performance was well received by audiences and helped establish her as a leading lady in Hollywood. The film's commercial success opened doors for Stowe that had previously been closed. She went on to star in major films throughout the early 1990s, including Revenge with Kevin Costner, Unlawful Entry, and The Last of the Mohicans, which became one of her most iconic roles. While Ebert may have envisioned a different actress bringing more comedy to the part, Stowe brought a grounded, believable quality to Maria that made the somewhat implausible romance feel genuine. The role proved to be the launching pad Stowe needed to transition from television work to becoming a respected film actress. Fact 4. Vancouver doubled for Seattle everywhere. Although Stakeout is set entirely in Seattle, Washington, not a single frame of the movie was actually filmed there. The entire production took place in Vancouver, British Columbia, which stood in for Seattle throughout every scene. This was a common practice in the 1980s as Vancouver offered lower production costs, generous tax incentives, and a film-friendly infrastructure that made it attractive to Hollywood productions. The locations chosen for filming ranged from impressive to downright unpleasant. The production utilized the abandoned Riverview Psychiatric Hospital for several key scenes, a sprawling facility that had an eerie, institutional atmosphere perfect for the film's darker moments. They also filmed at a genuine maximum security prison, giving those sequences an authentic edge that would have been difficult to replicate on a soundstage. But perhaps the most memorable location for all the wrong reasons was the Campbell Avenue Fish Wharf, where cast and crew spent an entire week filming scenes near active fish processing plants. The overwhelming smell of fish and ocean water created what crew members diplomatically described as an aromatic week. The pungent odors from the processing facilities permeated everything, from costumes to equipment, making it one of the most challenging location shoots of the entire production. Actors had to perform romantic and comedic scenes while trying not to react to the powerful fish smell surrounding them. Despite these olfactory challenges, Vancouver's diverse locations successfully convinced audiences they were watching a story unfold in Seattle, and the city would go on to become one of Hollywood's favorite stand-in locations for decades to come. Fact 5. Screenplay won a prestigious mystery award. The screenplay for Stakeout, written by Jim Koof, earned significant recognition from one of the most respected organizations in mystery and crime writing. In 1988, Koof won the Edgar Allan Poe Award for Best Motion Picture Screenplay, a prestigious honor presented annually by the Mystery Writers of America. The Edgar Awards, often called the Edgars, are considered the highest achievement in mystery fiction and crime writing, making Koof's win particularly meaningful. The award recognized how successfully Koof had blended comedy, romance, and genuine thriller elements into a cohesive and entertaining screenplay. What makes this achievement even more interesting is learning about how the script originated. According to interviews with Koof, the initial concept for Stakeout was incredibly simple and minimalist. He started with just a basic premise about two guys stuck in a room together, essentially exploring what would happen when you forced two different personalities to spend extended time in close quarters while conducting surveillance. From this stripped-down starting point, Koof developed the buddy cop dynamic between Chris Lecce and Bill Reimers, added the complicated romantic subplot involving surveillance target Maria Maguire, and wove in the dangerous escaped convict storyline that provided the film's suspense. The Edgar Award win validated Koof's approach to genre blending and proved that audiences and critics appreciated screenplays that didn't fit neatly into a single category. The success of Stakeout's screenplay also helped establish Koof as a reliable Hollywood writer, leading to future projects including Rush Hour and the National Treasure franchise. Fact 6. 5-week box office domination Stakeout. Opened in theaters on August 5, 1987, and immediately captured the attention of moviegoers across America. The film topped the United States box office in its opening weekend and then proceeded to hold the #1 position for 5 consecutive weeks, an impressive feat that demonstrated the movie's broad appeal and strong word of mouth. In an era before social media or internet marketing, maintaining that kind of box office dominance required audiences to genuinely enjoy the film enough to recommend it to friends and family. Stakeout became one of only 2 films released in 1987 to achieve this 5-week streak at #1, sharing that distinction with Fatal Attraction, which also held the top spot for 5 straight weeks later that same year. By the time Stakeout finished its theatrical run, the film had earned $65.6 million domestically, making it the 8th highest grossing film of 1987. That success was particularly remarkable considering the competition that year, which included hits like Beverly Hills Cop 2, Lethal Weapon, The Untouchables, and Predator. The film's strong performance proved that audiences were hungry for buddy cop comedies that balanced humor with genuine stakes, and it helped establish the template that many similar films would follow throughout the late 80s and early 90s. The financial success also ensured that Disney's Touchstone Pictures division, which distributed the film, would continue investing in adult-oriented comedies rather than focusing exclusively on family entertainment. Fact 7. British Minister's Shockingly Harsh Review. Alan Clarke, a controversial British Member of Parliament and government minister, was known for keeping detailed personal diaries that he later published to considerable attention and controversy. In his diary entries from 1987, Clarke included his thoughts on various films he watched, and his assessment of Stakeout stands as one of the harshest reviews the film ever received. Clarke dismissed the movie as total rubbish and used offensive language to express his contempt, writing that it was made by spastics for spastics. He continued his scathing criticism by claiming that a parody in Private Eye, the British satirical magazine, could not have been more ludicrous or more trite than what he considered an actual attempt at entertainment. Clarke characterized Stakeout as an embarrassing example of the comedy thriller genre, suggesting it represented everything wrong with Hollywood's approach to mixing humor and suspense. The bluntness and cruelty of Clarke's published review stands in stark contrast to the generally positive reception the film received from both audiences and most mainstream critics. While some reviewers noted that the film had flaws or felt the romantic subplot stretched credibility, few dismissed it with the level of venom Clarke displayed in his private writings. The diary entry provides an unusual glimpse into how the film was received internationally, particularly among British viewers who may have had different expectations for crime comedies than American audiences. Clarke's diaries became famous for their controversial opinions and offensive language about many subjects, and his brutal takedown of Stakeout became just one of many provocative entries that sparked debate when the diaries were published. Fact 8. The Riverview Hospital Film Legacy. Riverview Hospital, the psychiatric facility used to film several scenes in Stakeout, went on to become one of the most recognizable and frequently used filming locations in all of Canada. The sprawling campus in Coquitlam, British Columbia, featured numerous buildings with distinct architectural styles, ranging from Victorian structures to more modern facilities, all set on extensive grounds that provided filmmakers with incredible versatility. After Stakeout used the location in 1987, word spread throughout the film and television industry about this atmospheric site. The hospital's institutional appearance, long corridors, and somewhat eerie abandoned sections made it perfect for productions that needed psychiatric hospitals, prisons, government facilities, or any location requiring a sense of isolation and institutional coldness. Over the following decades, Riverview appeared in countless productions that became part of pop culture history. The X-Files used it multiple times during the show's Vancouver filming years. Supernatural, Smallville, and numerous other television series shot episodes there. Major films, including Deadpool 2 and Shutter Island, filmed key sequences at Riverview, taking advantage of its authentic institutional atmosphere that would be nearly impossible to recreate on a soundstage. Horror films particularly loved the location, using its empty wards and aging buildings to create genuinely unsettling environments. The facility appeared in so many productions that film-savvy viewers began recognizing it across different movies and shows, turning it into an unexpected celebrity location. Even as the actual psychiatric hospital transitioned away from patient care, its second life as a filming location ensured it remained a vital part of the entertainment industry. Fact 9. Inspired 2 Indian film remakes. The success of Stakeout in America caught the attention of Indian filmmaker Priyadarshan, who saw potential to adapt the Stakeout premise and buddy cop dynamic for Indian audiences. In 1989, just 2 years after the original American film's release, Priyadarshan directed Vandanam, a Malayalam language film that took the core concept of Stakeout and reimagined it within Indian cultural contexts and storytelling traditions. The Malayalam version starred Mohanlal, one of the biggest stars in South Indian cinema, bringing his own interpretation to a character inspired by the roles played by Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez. Vandanam succeeded in Kerala and with Malayalam-speaking audiences, proving that the Stakeout concept could work across different cultural contexts. But Priyadarshan wasn't finished with the material. 2 years later, in 1991, he remade his own Malayalam version as Nirnayam, a Telugu language film starring Nagarjuna, another major star in South Indian cinema. This dual remake strategy was relatively common in Indian cinema, where successful films in one regional language market were often adapted for audiences speaking different languages. Both Vandanam and Nirnayam took the basic premise of police officers conducting surveillance on a woman connected to a criminal case and developing romantic complications, but they adjusted the cultural details, comic sensibilities, and dramatic elements to suit their respective audiences. The existence of these two Indian adaptations demonstrates how universally appealing the core concept of Stakeout proved to be, transcending not just language barriers, but also vast cultural differences between American and Indian storytelling traditions and audience expectations. Fact 10. Emilio Estevez's first adult role. When Emilio Estevez signed on to play Detective Chris Lecce in Stakeout, he was only 25 years old, but had already built a successful career playing teenagers and young adults in films like The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, and Ripple Man. In interviews during the production of Stakeout, Estevez revealed that he considered this role a significant turning point in his career. He described it as the first time he would play an adult character on screen, marking his transition from the young Brat Pack actor to a more mature leading man. The role also represented his first genuine comedy part, requiring him to develop timing and chemistry with Richard Dreyfuss while maintaining the credibility of being an experienced police detective. The age issue presented a real challenge for Estevez, who had a youthful face that made it difficult for audiences to accept him as someone with years of law enforcement experience. His solution was strategic and old-fashioned. Estevez grew a mustache specifically for the role, using the facial hair to add a few years to his appearance and help him look more like a seasoned detective rather than a kid playing dress-up. This simple trick worked surprisingly well. The mustache, combined with his performance opposite the older and more experienced Dreyfuss, helped audiences accept Estevez as a legitimate police officer rather than questioning why someone so young held such a position. The role successfully transitioned Estevez's career trajectory and proved he could carry a major studio comedy while playing against type from his earlier work. Fact 11. Forrest Whitaker's rising star moment Stakeout featured Forrest Whitaker in a supporting role as Detective Jack Pismo, one of the fellow officers working alongside the main characters. This appearance came during what would prove to be a breakthrough year for Whitaker, who was rapidly establishing himself as one of Hollywood's most talented and versatile actors. 1987 saw Whitaker appear in 3 significant films that showcased his range and screen presence. He had a memorable role in Platoon, Oliver Stone's intense Vietnam War drama that won the Academy Award for Best Picture. He also appeared in Good Morning Vietnam alongside Robin Williams, playing a character in another military setting, but in a much different tone. Stakeout allowed Whitaker to show his abilities in a contemporary urban setting as part of an ensemble cast. While his role as Detective Pismo was relatively small compared to his work in the other 2 films, it demonstrated his ability to create memorable characters even in limited screen time. The detective role showed Whitaker could handle comedy and lighter material just as effectively as the dramatic work he was becoming known for. This versatility would prove crucial throughout his career. Within the next few years, Whitaker would earn critical acclaim for his portrayal of jazz legend Charlie Parker in Bird, directed by Clint Eastwood, winning the Best Actor award at the Cannes Film Festival. He would eventually win an Academy Award for Best Actor for his powerful performance as Idi Amin in The Last King of Scotland. Looking back, Stakeout represents an early step in Whitaker's journey toward becoming one of the most respected actors of his generation. Fact 12. Empty school became police station. The production designers for Stakeout faced a challenge common to many location-based films: finding an authentic-looking police station that would allow them the freedom to film without disrupting actual police operations. Rather than trying to work around active law enforcement schedules or build expensive sets from scratch, the location scouts discovered an ingenious solution in Vancouver. They found the Normal School, a school building that was completely empty and available for the production to transform however they needed. The term normal school refers to institutions that historically trained teachers, and this particular building had apparently ceased operations but remained standing and structurally sound. The production team moved into the empty building and completely redressed it to represent a fully operational police precinct headquarters. This meant installing desks, filing cabinets, computers, phones, and all the equipment and decorations that would make the space look like real detectives worked there every day. They created different sections for various police departments, set up interrogation rooms, built out the captain's office, and added the countless small details that bring authenticity to a workplace setting. The advantage of having a completely empty building rather than an active location meant the crew could run cables anywhere they needed, control all the lighting, and film at any time without worrying about disturbing actual police work or school activities. Actors could move freely through the space, and directors could get any camera angle they wanted without architectural limitations. The Normal School transformation was so successful that audiences never questioned whether they were looking at an actual police station. Fact 13. Climactic Sawmill was a ghost town. For the film's intense finale, the production needed a location that would provide both visual interest and a sense of isolation and danger for the climactic confrontation between the police and the escaped convict. They found exactly what they needed at Patter Sawmills, located on the Fraser River, approximately 30 minutes outside downtown Vancouver. The sawmill had clearly seen better days and was described by crew members as a ghostly lumber yard, with derelict structures, aging equipment, and an abandoned industrial atmosphere that perfectly suited the film's needs. The rundown condition of the sawmill wasn't just visually striking, it also added genuine tension to the action sequences filmed there. The aging wooden structures, weathered metal equipment, and generally unstable appearance of the facilities created a real sense that danger could come from the environment itself, not just from the armed criminals the police were pursuing. Audiences watching the shootout couldn't help but worry that characters might fall through rotted floorboards, get trapped under collapsing structures, or face hazards from the decaying industrial equipment scattered throughout the property. The location's position on the Fraser River added another layer of visual interest and danger, with water visible in the background and the possibility of characters ending up in the river during the confrontation. Filming action sequences in such a deteriorating location required careful safety precautions to protect the cast and crew. But the authentic decay was impossible to recreate convincingly in a controlled studio environment. The gamble of using this atmospheric but challenging location paid off, resulting in a memorable and tense finale. Fact 14. The sequel. Nobody wanted. 6 years after the success of Stakeout, Disney's Touchstone Pictures decided to reunite Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez for a sequel titled Another Stakeout. The 1993 follow-up brought back the buddy cop dynamic that had worked so well in the original, with Dreyfuss and Estevez reprising their roles as detectives Bill Reimers and Chris Lecce. However, the sequel made a significant change to the formula by adding Rosie O'Donnell to the cast as a third member of the surveillance team. O'Donnell was becoming increasingly popular as a comedian and television personality at the time, and the studio hoped her presence would add fresh energy to the franchise. Unfortunately, the addition backfired spectacularly, with critics and audiences. Multiple reviews specifically singled out O'Donnell's performance as problematic, describing her character as brash and annoying rather than funny or charming. The chemistry that had made the first film work felt diluted and disrupted by the three-person dynamic, and the jokes that worked with two characters stuck in a room together didn't translate well to three people. The box office results told the story clearly. Another Stakeout grossed only $20.2 million domestically, less than a third of the original film's $65.6 million haul. The dramatic drop in audience interest and the poor critical reception effectively killed any possibility of continuing the franchise. There would be no third Stakeout film, and the disappointing sequel became a cautionary tale about how adding unnecessary elements to a successful formula can destroy what made the original work. Fact 15. Real prison had weekend-only inmates. One of the stranger details about filming at Ocala Prison involves the specific section of the facility that the production used for their scenes. The prison wing, where cameras and equipment were set up, was normally reserved for a particular category of offender that seems almost impossible to believe actually existed. These were part-time inmates who only served their sentences on weekends, reporting to the prison on Friday evening or Saturday morning, and remaining incarcerated until Sunday evening or Monday morning before returning to their regular lives. This unusual arrangement was apparently used for certain nonviolent offenders who had jobs or family obligations during the week but were required to serve jail time for their convictions. The weekend-only inmates would arrive at Ocala, spend their required time behind bars, and then leave to go back to work on Monday morning. A former guard at Ocala later recounted his experience during the Stakeout filming in interviews, providing fascinating details about what it was like to have a Hollywood production invade the prison. He described watching the filming from his regular unit, which overlooked the movie set, and observing the strange juxtaposition of real prison operations continuing just yards away from actors pretending to be in prison. The guard's perspective offered insight into how surreal the experience was for everyone involved, with real correctional officers watching movie stars portray fictionalized versions of their jobs while actual inmates went about their routines nearby. The presence of weekend-only inmates in the very spaces being used for filming added yet another layer of bizarre authenticity to an already unusual filming location.